this is Kasey with Harmony Horticultural Consulting. Today we're going to review rose cutbacks. And when I say rose cutbacks, we want to cut back roses pretty aggressively in the winter months, January or February, in order to force those rose bushes into a short dormancy so they can spring out with new growth and vigorous blooming in the late spring. Stick around and I'll show you some techniques for pruning and then follow up with fertilizer applications shortly after that. So some of the first things that you'll need to find are some very sharp sanitized pruners. So there are different ways to sanitize your pruning gear. You can use a 10% bleach water or 1 to 10 ratio bleach to water. Dip them for a minute and then let them dry or wipe them clean. Bleach and some of the other sanitizing materials are quite corrosive to your pruning gear, so I recommend WD-40 or some type of lubrication on your metal just so they don't get rusted and start corroding. Now you do want them also very sharp. So I sharpen almost on a daily basis when I'm doing pruning. You can get some type of sharpening stone or pruning sharpener and just run across that blade 3 times, flip it over, and knock off those shavings on the other side. And you'll know when it's sharp because it'll start to catch on your skin. These are for smaller canes. Now, if you're working with older, larger canes, you are gonna want to get a larger cutting device. So loppers will work. Again, these are a little old and you can see the metal starting to break down. But sharpen them, sanitize them, and then you'll be ready to go. Some of the other things you'll want are some type of protective arm long sleeves, gloves. Some of the rose bushes can have gnarly thorns and definitely don't want to draw blood for your pruning. And then for fertilizer, we're going to use 2 different products today. We're going to use a soluble, quick release rose fertilizer. And then this is going to only last a couple weeks in our soil, but I'm going to follow up with an organic rose food in the soil at the same time, work it into the soil, and this will be more of a slow release, and it'll start working once our soils start to warm up later in the spring. In addition, I also like to do some type of dormant oil or neem oil on the canes. It will kill any lingering pests that are overwintering on your rose bushes. This is a neem, and it also has a pyrethrin, which is an exciter or contact insecticide. It has a very short residual. But what that's going to do is excite any insects that might be hiding in those cracks and crevices, get them to come out, and then the neem oil will take care of them either by smothering them or by killing them shortly after. The last thing that you will need is some type of organic mulch or bark mulch to put over top of your roses after cutting back and fertilizing. And what the organic or the mulch will provide is some organic matter to our desert soil, which is often devoid of any organic matter. So over time, this will break down with the microbial action or activity in the soil, and become part of the soil and be additional carbon and food for your rose bushes. All right, so we have our sharpened pruners. Now we need to decide where to start. These rose bushes are floribunda or icebergs, and so the flower is going to form almost in clusters on top of a bush, as opposed to a tea rose or some of the modern hybrid roses where you'll have a single stem or single rose on a single stem. And so the floribundas we're going to cut a little taller than those single stem or tea roses. Ideally, I'd like to cut these about 24 inches off of the ground as my final height, and then allow them to reach about 3 feet every season. And so the priorities that I'm looking for are anything that's growing in an inward direction, anything that's crossing, dead, sunburned canes, which are a problem here in the desert Southwest. And so I'm just going to start looking at the bottom for anything that is of concern. One of the other things that we're looking for are any root suckers that come off of the plant below the graft union. And so if there's anything that's coming off of the roots, you want to eliminate those. So as you can see, I'm cutting off some of these lower stems, and this one I've eliminated because it's very small. We want to aim to have canes that are larger than the size of a pencil remain after our winter cutbacks. I'm also going to eliminate any dead branches that might form or have died in the previous season. And then just so I can get an idea of where I want to continue as far as height, I'm looking for, again, that 24-inch height. And I'm going to go ahead and select this one to remove, as well as this one because it is growing towards the center of the rose bush. Now this one is small. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And this is a young, about a 3-year-old rose bush. And again, it's growing in the shade, so it's not as vigorous of grower as it would be if it were in full sun. Again, we have broken branches we're eliminating. I'm also eliminating small branches that are not quite the size of a pencil. So the last step is to really strip all of these leaves off. And you can do that with a pruner, or you can delicately just strip all the leaves off of these. As you can see, there's not a lot of canes left on this plant. I am going to remove those. And as you can see, I'm angling this cut at a 45-degree angle with the bud going in the opposite direction. So we want the angle of the cut to go in the opposite direction. So if water were to pool, splash on it, it's going to drip or flow away from the new bud that's forming. One of the other important things when cutting back is to remove all the extra or excess clippings, leaves, debris that come off of the roses. This is where insects might be overwintering, lingering, so it's important to collect all of the scraps that or clippings that you've removed from the canes. It's going to be about 6 to 8 weeks until your bushes spring back to life in the mid to late spring and produce more flowers. All right, so we have these all cleaned up now, and the one thing I like to do is to apply that dormant oil or some type of neem oil, again, to coat any of the canes. This is also antifungal. My concern in the desert Southwest is not fungal, but mostly insects are our biggest enemy when it comes to rose bushes. So I'm just doing a thorough soaking of the canes, making sure to get in any of the cracks and crevices, and spray until it's dripping wet. So now that we have them all stripped down, we did our pest treatment, now we're going to apply the organic fertilizer and work it into the soil. So we always want to read the label directions. All fertilizers have different amount of minerals in them, and so it's really important that you follow the directions on that particular bag. For this particular product, I'm using, it is an organic fertilizer, so it's more on the slow release side. I'm going to work it into the soil. It also contains some beneficial microbes in the material, and so it's important to work those into the soil because they don't readily move down into the soil profile. So I'll apply it right around the base, and then just using my hands or a spade or some type of garden tool, work it into the soil and enjoy the beautiful scent of organic fertilizer while you're working. So our next step is to add soluble fertilizer, and what this is it's going to be a quick release fertilizer. I am using a rose food, which is high in phosphorus. For early spring, you want to use something that has some nitrogen in it too. Since we've already applied the organic material, I feel fine applying a high phosphorus product right now. If I feel like we're not getting the growth out of the foliage in the next month or so, I'll go ahead and add a growth soluble fertilizer at that time. So I've read the label, and now I'm mixing. I've put a little bit of water in the bucket. or your watering can. I have measured exactly how much I need here, and I will finish off solubilizing, making sure it goes into complete solution in the water, and then after it is mixed, I will drench it over top of the roses, and that will be all the fertilizer we will need to apply during winter cutbacks. So anytime you fertilize plants, it's very important that you water it in immediately. Otherwise, you risk burning your plants. So after you apply your fertilizer, both granular or liquid or soluble, as we just did, it's important to apply plenty of water, not to leach it through the soil profile, but to provide enough water around the plant to fully solubilize the fertilizer and move it into the root zone. Our final step is going to be top dressing with that organic mulch or some type of compost. I do like a nice dark rich color of mulch because I feel the plants will pop against the nice dark background. And we're going to apply this in about a 2 to 3 inch layer over top of your entire bed. I like to try to get this mulch applied in the late winter, early spring, and then again in September, October in the desert regions. Again, this is very helpful for our soil. It also helps retain soil moisture during dry periods. So there you have it. Those are tips on how to prune back your rose bushes each winter going into spring. Now we will do this again, not as severely moving into the fall. Usually around the end of September, early October, we'll take off about 30% of the season's growth in order to force or promote new blooms into the early winter months. And if we have mild winters, you should be able to get lots of great blooms until we again force that bush into a quick dormancy and have to look at the canes for a few weeks, but then you will be so thankful you did, because this is what is super helpful to get lots of production out of your rose bushes. Thanks for watching, and holler if you have any questions.